and welcome to the latest edition of the ECTAA Travel Insights podcast. And today I am delighted to be joined by Frank Ostam, the president of ECTAA. And so we're going to be talking about the association strategy and then some discussion about sustainability. And if we have time, we'll be talking about everybody's favorite topic, the Package Travel Directive. But to begin, Frank, thanks for joining us. I think it's a complex role being president of an association with so many different members from different parts of Europe. You might have these differences of opinion or viewpoints or approaches when you take members from the south of Europe and members from the north of Europe. How do you find managing all of that at ECTAA?
First of all, by finding it a very nice and interesting and fascinating job. For me, it's nice to have an exchange of so many cultures because you're right. It's not difficult, but it's, let's say, challenging to have a unifying voice. But if you choose your topics wisely, it's no problem. And we have an excellent staff, which is also very good in managing that. For
sure. Staff is important. Choosing the topics, I think, is very important as well. Often at associations, you have this dynamic where sometimes members or even members of members wonder, what are they doing in Brussels? What's really happening there? Do you see a part of your role as trying to communicate that to all of the members? And how do you approach that?
That's one of the main tasks, I think, the executive board has and the ECTAA staff has, because we do a lot of things. This morning we had a meeting, and then we also concluded that it's not only being very good on the job and doing the things you have to do, but it's also a kind of be good and tell it. And we have to do that even more to really prove the added value of ECTAA, not only for our members, but also for our stakeholders, which is very important. So it's a very important task of ECTAA of not only being on top of every topic, but also to communicate the things we do.
It's not enough just to do the job well.
No, because if you look at, a lot is about communication and explaining what you're doing and argumenting why you were doing it. And that's part of the nice job.
And of course, the travel sector is a very dynamic sector. Can you characterize how ECTAA's strategy is evolving to contend with that?
Well, we're right in the middle of that. And the nice thing is that we are all, and I'm talking about companies, we are also what the top man of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, always called product obsessed. We in the travel sector are really very much we know our destinations and we love the products and the services we give to our consumers. But it's also very important to look for other topics. And the thing about ECTAA is that we have to constantly really prove that the context is creeping upon us. If you look at all the developments, societal developments, if you look at the external pressure, it's increasing. And then it's not enough to concentrate on beautiful products and very good services. You need to have a platform of like-minded stakeholders, to have a process of formulating shared opinions, of having one tone of voice. And I think it has much more impact to do that on a collective basis than on an individual basis. And my opinion is, and I really believe that, is that the role of ECTAA or any organization is getting more and more important because of this context.
Has this something to do with the time horizon as well? Because members of ECTAA members, a lot of them are small and medium-sized enterprises. They're concerned with the next 6 months or the next year. Would you need an association, or do you need an association to take a longer-term view?
That's exactly what you say, but the awareness is really, during past years, especially also after COVID, is changing. That every entrepreneur, whether small or big, always realizes that it's not only about the product, it's also about what is happening in the world. And I read a very nice book about adaptability. And every management literature was also always concentrated on efficiency and being very effective. But it's changed now into being adaptable. So you have to be aware of your environment, you have to be I would say engaged in all the environments you are involved in, to really see changes, to really sense even changes. And this seeing, this sensing of changes, you can do that also, and you have to do that also on a platform, because it has more impact, because it also has much more impact towards governments. But you also have to be very vocal about it. That's what we have to do.
We'll come to some of the particular challenges and some of the files that ECTAA works on a bit later in the discussion, like Package Travel Directive and MDMS and so on. Now, I want to bring them up now because these files, they're very relevant to members and they can take up a lot of resources. They're very complex files and there's a lot at stake. But do you think that the association needs to also move beyond these type of files to engage in some of the bigger picture discussions about the future of Europe?
That's what we are discussing now. And if it's up to me, but we're going to have the discussion, that would be the path we have to go. We have to broaden our perception of our trade. It's not only about product, it's not only about destinations, it's not only about PTD, but it's also about what is our added value? Why are we on Earth? Why we think tourism and travel is so relevant? How do we move things in society? What do we do with our products? How is this changing consumer reacting? So that's the fascinating part of the discussion for me, is how do we do that? How do we do that in the collective of ECTAA?
Because I think that if you're in the middle of a particular industry or you've done something for a long time, you can lose sight of that. Yeah. The broader value of travel, for instance. Yeah. Can you articulate about that a bit more?
If we don't do that, nobody does. Yeah. So we should do that. What's the added value of traveling? There are scientists who say that you even get more healthy by traveling. What's the positive impact? We always talk about the negative impact, and there is a lot of negative impact of traveling, but there is also a lot of positive impact. Tourism matters, but if we as travel companies don't say that, who will? So we have to be much more vocal, and I hope our members, and I'm sure our members will agree with me, we have to be much more vocal about the added value of traveling.
Are you reassured that the European institutions are starting to hear this message? Because it seems that in the current mandate, the Commission, some of the other institutions, there are signs that they are taking this a bit more seriously.
It depends on the horizon you have and on the path. I studied history a long time ago, so it depends also on the era. But if you take the last, let's say after COVID, we see small steps in which governments take tourism and travel more serious. We have a European Commissioner. We didn't have that. And it's a small step. I understand for an entrepreneur in Holland or Germany, well, who cares? But for us at a European level, at a lobby level, it's of utmost importance to have such a person, to have a contact person, and to realize that also the European Commission has some kind of vision about the importance of tourism. So small steps, but once again, we have to be much more vocal about that. And we are sometimes too defensive. We should be very much a little bit more aggressive. And if you look at lobbying power and about civil servants working for agriculture, for instance, and compare that with civil servants working on the tourism level, it's nothing. It's not. We at the global level, tourism is 3 times bigger than agriculture. Well, I would like to have the same finances and the same kind of thinking force with civil servants at the same level.
This is big picture thinking.
This is
but why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Now, so you're from the Netherlands. Now, I hear some stories from the Netherlands which I find sometimes shocking, because we talk about the positive perception, the benefits of tourism, but sometimes people look at tourism from a very negative point of view as well. Yeah. And so I've heard examples of, for instance, advertisements about tourism being under pressure or potentially restricted because they're linked to an increased environmental footprint. So it's almost like travel is being seen as cigarette promotion was seen a few decades ago. Is that still the case in the Netherlands, or is there kind of some shift recently in perception?
To be honest, I think it's a relatively small group who's very vocal about it. That doesn't mean that we don't have responsibilities. But when I started in the travel industry a long time ago, I warned people, not that I had the vision, but I warned people we have to take care that we don't end up in the corner of the tobacco industry. And we are right there at the moment. So if you look at image of tourism, if you look at people, especially people in the southern countries thinking about tourism, protesting tourism, we have a big problem. We have to explain what we are doing. We also have to state that we are a very big industry and we have to accept new and increasing responsibilities. We don't have to run away from it. Tell the very transparent story, and then at a collective level, like at the platform of ECTAA, explain what we are doing, and that we are doing our utmost to limit the negative impacts and to maximize the positive impacts, and to try to change the mindset in using tourism as a force for good instead of being used by it.
Yeah.
And that's simply said, and there's a world of actions behind it, but it's really something, if I look at my colleagues within ECTAA, within Europe, a lot of is going on from the positive side.
Yes. Certainly we see in Brussels that because of different priorities, competitiveness, and now security, resilience, and defence, there's just less bandwidth to really focus on this topic of the environment. Now, I wonder, does that have implication for companies? Because I know that a lot of travel companies have really done a tremendous amount, a lot of environmental initiatives for the sake of the environment, but I guess also as a response to the political climate. Yeah. Do you see that continuing, or if there's a kind of shift of focus away from the importance of the environment?
For that question, Paul.
That people can kind of ease off on these sort of initiatives.
Well, we all know the political scenery, the landscape has changed. There's more centre-right and far-right. So it's. I think the European Commission will have a difficult time to really to put a lot of progress. So you see the top priority has changed. On the other hand, and allow me the metaphor, I think the climate train has departed. And once in a while, the pace of the train will slow down, but the destination is clear. And this will mean that, well, if you look at our role as ECTAA, and that's also the message I have towards entrepreneurs, we have to prepare. You have to change. You have to prepare for the transition. You have to prepare in order to meet climate goals. You have to be prepared to really increase the credibility of a tourism sector. If you talk about a future fit tourism sector, then we need to take some action. And so I hope that, and I think, at least I am committed and very determined to continue with all the actions we do within ECTAA and to get to this future fit and credible and greener tourism.
Now, at the same time, in spite of the very significant emphasis on environmental topics in the Netherlands and in the Nordic countries at European level, it doesn't seem to have had an impact on actual travel numbers. And I've heard you talk about the say-do gap before. Yeah. Does that maybe give us a sign that maybe there's not too much to worry about from the travel sector, that people will always want to travel? Yeah, people will always travel. And it's up to us to seduce them to travel and to go on holidays. And there is a big gap between say and do. But to be honest, I don't care. I don't mind that consumers are not that into sustainability yet. But it's up to us as a travel sector. So they might assume that we are doing our best to limit the negative and to maximize the positive effects. We have to do our best to really give them the comfortable feeling that it's a good way to travel. Yes. You mentioned over-tourism. I think that's one of the huge topics that the sector needs to contend with. One thing you never really hear spoken about is under-tourism. Yeah. There are lots of wonderful places in Europe that don't get the type of tourism attention that perhaps they deserve. Is there any scope there? Is there a way of kind of supporting regions so that they can do a better job of promoting themselves? I would love to come back and talk a whole day about over-tourism because I hate the term. Okay. And every time we use over-tourism, we put a negative framing on tourists. It's not a tourist problem. It's a housing problem. It's an infrastructure problem. It's managing the flows. It's not the flow itself.
And yes, that's the interesting. So I'd like to talk about balanced and unbalanced tourism. That's a much more better term.
You don't look at it from the point of view of just the tourist, but also the destination.
Yes, of course. They we have that's problem of the travel sector. It's so much fragmented, but one of the most important parties, one of the most important stakeholders are destinations, and a lot is happening there. I have got contacts with so many destinations, and they all talk about sustainable projects. The only thing is that in our sector we are so fragmented, and we don't seem to succeed in getting this shared voice, this shared common opinion about what the travel sector is doing, and what is our strategy to eventually end up with a sustainable kind of tourism.
Yeah.
But we are really determined to get there.
Do you take my point about under tourism? Is that also a
term? Oh yes. It's not only about over, but there's lots of. I was with Christmas. I was in Venice, and there were not a lot of people. Yeah. So just as an example, there are lots of places which are. Have lots of potential. It's about planning, it's about regulating, it's about clever making use of AI and technical solutions. So over-tourism, let's skip that. It's not over-tourism, it's not the fault of tourists. It's a balancing of tourism. That's the essence, and that's the challenge we have to do.
Let's move to the Package Travel Directive. There's something interesting about package travel in that a consumer will pay for something and not experience maybe for another 6 months or another 8 months. So it's quite different to buying something physical or even buying something online where you will receive it. Do you think that the way that the directive looks now, that there is a risk to package travel overall?
The way it is now, it will be a major blow not only for companies, but it's also a missed opportunity for consumers to take advantage of the advantages of package travel. So they leave millions of the European Commission, millions of consumers out in the cold if the regulation will stay the same as it is now. It's really a missed opportunity for more consumer protection. And honestly, I'm not involved every day. I really don't understand why we don't get this message across. If we want to have a good working package travel directive, if we want to raise the market share of travel packages, because it's now down to 10%, and it was at one time in 2013, it was 26%, I think. So it's decreasing. And if we try to get other transport and travel regulations like the air passenger rights regulation, especially air travel, to the same level as a package travel directive, because that's the best protected product ever in the European Commission, looking from a consumer perspective, then we have more consumers protected and we have got a stable basis for a travel sector.
My final question is about the role of travel agents, because with the advent of technology, people have spoken about the need, for instance, for brick and mortar travel agents. How do you see that now? Do you think that there is still a role for that sort of face-to-face component that some travel agents bring?
Of course. Since the time I started, they always say, "Oh well, soon we don't have travel agents anymore," which is really nonsense. But they will change their role. So, but what will stay is direct personal contact with consumers. That will do the job, and I believe in that. And it's not about the product, because consumers can buy products everywhere. But the personal contact, knowing your customer, being customer obsessed instead of product obsessed, will bring you a lot. And whether IT will help, but real human connection will only be via humans. So I'm still very much believe in the role of travel agents in another role, but they will have a good future.
Frank Osdam, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.